Welcome to AcQuum Consulting's How-To series for SunSystems. My name is Catherine Hyde, and today we're going to be talking about using the Indirect function to perform calculations in Q&A report designs. What I'm going to do is start with a simple example. We have a detailed report here which has got our period actuals and this period last year, and what we want to do is calculate a variance. If we were looking at Excel functionality, that calculation would be quite straightforward. We'd be able to say equals D12 minus E12. And that will give us the result that we're looking for. With Q&A report designs, however, you can't actually enter the formula in that format, and we have to use the indirect function. The indirect function has the following syntax. So we have indirect, the reference text, and then a command. So if we look at an example of that, we could use indirect and then the C5 in quotes, and then that would give us the contents, the direct contents of C5. It's referring to a fixed cell. That would apply if we were had the A1 omitted, or if we actually had a comma true on the end. But the A1 comes more into play when you actually want to refer to rows and columns from the position you're in. So if we look at the next example, we have indirect, and then we can say we want to go for the existing row. So we'd leave row at R. Then we want to go for a column -2. So we're saying we want to go 2 columns to the left from where our cursor is at that point. And the false means that the Excel will read that and know to use this structure of cell reference as opposed to a fixed cell reference. So that's a very brief introduction. The aim isn't to give you full details on all the options with indirect. You can research that on the internet. However, we're just going to give you a couple of worked examples. So if I go back to my report again, so this formula here, I can actually replace some of these cell references with in the indirect formula. So when we look at it, we're currently in F, column F, and row 12. Well, I want my formula to stay on the same row, so I want the row to be the same, but I actually want to do this calculation. The first part of the calculation is using D12, which is 2 columns to my left. So I can replace this formula here with the indirect. Row, I want it to stay in the same row. Column, I actually want to go back -2. I need to put the closed brackets. I use the quotes to finish the cell reference, and then I want to say false so that it knows to use that structure of cell referencing. So that my formula still works and returns the same amount. Maybe better if I actually do this example on a cell that's got a result in it. So if I copy that down, we will see that it does actually return the variance. So then I can actually expand that, and I can use the copy-paste functionality to make it a bit quicker to actually finish converting this formula. So if I use copy-paste, and then I can actually say, well, this time my first column, I'm going back 2 columns, and then I want to subtract from that 1 column to my left, so I can change that to a 1. So that is my formula converted to the indirect function. The next step is to actually put that into your Q&A report. Now, what I'm going to do is copy this from an area I prepared it earlier. So if we actually look in my PowerPoint reference, what we'll see is I've got that formula, which I pasted in earlier. So I could then copy that into my Q&A report. Alternatively, you might have Notepad or something else open, and you could copy this into there and paste it into your formula. Finally, the other option is you can actually open your report, and if you know what you're doing, you can type the formula directly into the cell. So if you're going to take that situation where we're going to type that directly in, we would just double click there, and then this would be custom content. And you're not picking up an existing field from the report, you're actually putting custom content in. So at this point, I could copy the formula in. As I was saying, what you have got the ability to do is copy paste from another application. So in Word, I've got my formula here. So I can take the formula and actually paste that then into my Q&A design, making it a little bit quicker. I don't have to key it all in. So that's the variance. So if I click OK, then that's going to populate that formula into the variance column. So it's a very simple subtraction, and you see the formula is populated in there. For best practice, we might want to put an if statement at the front of that to actually test if cell D12 is greater than 0 before we return this. However, for the sake of this example, we're going to stick to a simple formula. Now then, if we want to take that formula and we want to take it to the next stage where we're looking not at just working on rows and columns with that indirect statement which relate to the cell that we're in, but we can actually also introduce the indirect formula where it's referring to a fixed cell, for example, cell C7 here. So what we can do if we wanted to actually uplift, so say we have an uplift column here, we want to multiply this period actuals by the uplift factor to get an estimate for next year, should we say. Very simple example. So what we could do is we again use the indirect statement. I'm going to copy that over here. So I'm going to use that existing one as my base just to save time. And what we're going to want to do this time is we're going to want to multiply whatever is in 3 columns to my left, 1, 2, 3 columns to my left. We're going to take this period actual, and then what we want to do is actually multiply it this time rather than minus. And we want to multiply it by a fixed cell reference. So we see we've got uplift factor in C7. Because it's a fixed cell reference, we can actually remove the false from here, so it's no longer expecting to see it as a in relation to our current position, and then we can type the cell reference in. So I've got multiplied by the C7, and that will give me an amount. Now, what I can do is just test that by multiplying my amount by the uplift factor just to check it is calculating correctly. It is calculating correctly. So now I can use that formula in my report. Now, what I can do is I can copy that and I can paste it into my Word document here, ready to use in a moment in my formula. So I'm now coming back to my report. I'm going to go into Q&A again. I'm going to give it a heading, this column, a heading of estimated, and then in the row of the report, this is where I actually put my formula, my indirect formula. So this is the one which is referring to a fixed cell C7. So I can take that formula, paste it in here, and say OK. So it didn't take much time, and now I've got a report which has got the estimated value for next year in the report. And because we're using that embedded in the report design, what we can do now, say if we change our account range to include some additional accounts, and then I rerun that report, I could have recalculated the range here. What we'll see, it's extended that all the way down. We've got more rows on the report, but the formula is still calculating. And the other good thing about embedding these formulas within your report design, they are populating the Excel cells with the formula. So all you can do, so my uplift factor was 1.1 there. Because we've got calculators turned on in Excel, I can just change that to 1.2. And when I do so, it's already updated the formulas for me. I don't even have to run the report again. So I've got the option to quickly do what if scenarios because I've got that formula embedded in the report. So those were 2 very simple examples of using indirect formulas. I hope they have proved of interest, and thank you for your time.